We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Tesam and Beis Mesechet Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 39b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought a Bryce, and the Bryce said that when we administer the oath by a Shevuos Modeh B'Mixas, we tell the person, you should know that a false oath, it's a very severe Aveira. The whole world can be punished, and that's not true by other Aveiros. And the Gemara asked in the previous Amud, what do you mean that it's not true by other Aveiros? Isn't there a concept that Kol Yisrael Areven Zeh Bozeh, that everybody is responsible for one another, and so therefore they're all held responsible? And the Gemara now continues and answers, Hasam sheyesh biyadam limchos. Over there, when we say that everyone is held responsible, that's in a situation where they would have been able to protest, they would have been able to stop the aveira v'lo micho, and they did not protest. That is specifically what that is talking about. And the Gemara continues and asks, "Mai ika bein rishoim de mishpachto l'rishoim di alma?" What's the difference between the wicked of his family? Because the Bryce in the previous Amud, it talked about the fact that his family is going to be punished, and also the wicked of the rest of the world, so to speak, they're also going to be punished. And bein tzadikim de mishpachto l'tzadikim di alma, what's the difference between the righteous from his family and the righteous of the world? And the Gemara here really is asking, what's the difference by Shevuot in terms of these two categories, and what's the difference by other Averis in terms of these two categories? And the Gemara continues and explains as follows: Hu b'shar averos bedine. When it comes to other averos, he himself gets the appropriate punishment. Urishoim de mishpach, and those who are wicked from his family, those who, so to speak, covered up for his avera, bedin chamer, they're going to get a strict punishment, but not exactly his punishment. Urishoim di alma, and the wicked from the rest of the world, in terms of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bozeh, that's bedin hakal. They're going to get a light judgment. They're going to get a small punishment. Tzadikei dehacha v'hacha. When it comes to other averos, those who are innocent in both part of the family or both part of the larger world, Petiri, they will be exempt. That's true by other Averis. And Gabe Shevuot, when it comes to a false oath, so Hu Urishoim de Mishpacha, he and the wicked of his family, Kedine, are all going to get his punishment, the same punishment that was mentioned in the previous Amud as well. Urishoim di Alman, when it comes to the wicked of the rest of the world who are held responsible, Bedin Chomer, they're going to get a strict punishment. But Tzadike dehacha v'hacha, and those who are innocent both here and here, meaning both from the family and the larger world, Bedin Hakal, they're still going to get a light judgment. They're still going to get a punishment, even though it's not going to be a severe punishment, but they will be held accountable. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Brisa above said, Im Amar Eini Nishbaf, he says, I don't want to take the Shevuos, so Pochano Somiyad, we dismiss him immediately, and he is liable to pay. Again, this is by Shevuos Modeh B'Mixas. V'Im Amar Hareini Nishbaf, and if he says, I am going to take the Shevuah, Ha'omdim Shama Omrim Zeh Lo Zeh, the people standing there, they say to one another, Suru Na Me'ala Ohalei Ha'anoshim Horashayim Wa'ela, turn away from the tents of these wicked people. And it's said in plural over here. It sounds like not only the defendant who's taking the Shevuah, but also the claimant who's causing him to take the Shevuah is also called one of the wicked people. And so that's what the Gemara asks, I understand the person who's taking the oath, so you can say that he's violating that prohibition if he takes a false oath. The Bach has the gear, so it doesn't mean to say bi'isura, but besurua, referring to the pasuk that was quoted, suruna. We understand the person taking the oath, why we're directing that statement to him. But the person administering the oath, the claimant, amai, why is he included in this? And the Gemara continues and answers Kiratanya, as we learned in a Bryce, Rabbi Shimon ben Tarfon Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Tarfon says, Shavuos Hashem Tia ben Shneim, a Shavuot is between both of them. Melamed Shechala Shavuot al Shneim. That shows that the Shavuot applies to both of them in some sense, and that's why we turn to both of them, or we turn regarding both of them to say Suruna Me'al Oleh Ha'anoshim Harashoim Ha'ela. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Brisa said, and also when we administer the oath to him, Omrim lo, we say to him, have a yodei, you should know, shelo al daitcha, that it's not according to your understanding that we're administering the oath, it's according to our understanding. And the Gemara says, Lama li lameimer lehachi, why do they need to say this to him? What is the concern? And the Gemara answers, Misham kanya de Rava, it's because of the reed of Rava. This was mentioned earlier in the Masechet. The case over there was the person took the oath that he didn't have any money of the person of the claimant, and what he had actually done was he had actually taken the money and put it in a reed that this other person, the claimant, was now holding, and so therefore, technically speaking, he did not take a false shvuah, because the person claiming the money from him really was holding the money that was hidden in that reed, and so therefore we have to say to him, you can't take the shvuah in that fashion, you can't take it according to your technical understanding, and in that way you'll be able to take the oath, and you'll believe that you haven't taken a false oath. No, the understanding of the shvuah is the way that the regular people understand what the shvuah means. It's according to the understanding of the Bezdin. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Hataina shtei kesef. It said that the claim is shtei kesef, it's two kesef. And the Gemara brings a machlokas amoraim on this. Amar Rav, Rav says, Kfiras taina. What it really means is that the denial of the claim has to be a minimum of shtei kesef. The person has to deny a minimum of two kesef, and then he's going to admit to a pruta. So really the claim has to be a little bit more than shtei kesef, according to Rav. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, no, taina atzma shtei kesef. The claim has to be shtei kesef. Afilu lo kafar ela bepruta, and even if he just denied a pruta, v'lo hoda ela bepruta, or he admitted only a pruta, chayiv, then he's chayiv. If he admits a pruta, that's the minimum amount of admission, and the denial has to be a minimum of a pruta, that would be modem and mixas, according to Shmuel. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Deika masnisin kivase de Rav. If you look at the Mishnah carefully, so the Mishnah seems to be like Rav, ukroi kivase de Shmuel, and the Psukim seem to go like Shmuel. And the Gemara explains, Deika masnisin kivase de Rav. The Mishnah seems to be like Rav, to Katani, because it says in the Mishnah, Hataina shtei kesef. It says that the claim is shtei kesef, v'hahodah shava pruta, and the hodah is a shava pruta. V'ilu kviras taina pruta lo Katani doesn't say the denial of the claim is a pruta, and so therefore we can assume what it really means to say is the kfiras taina shtei kesef. And the Gemara continues, Utanan nami, and we learn the same thing in a Mishnah as well. There's a Mishnah in Bab Metzia. It says, Hahodah bepruta, admission has to be a minimum of a pruta. V'ilu kfira bepruta lo Katani doesn't say that denial has to be a minimum of a pruta, and so therefore the Mishnayos seem to go like Rav. Ukroi kivase de Shmuel, and the Psukim, they seem to support Shmuel, because it's written in the Pasuk, Yitein ish al reo kesef o kelim lishmor. It says a person gives to his friend kesef, silver, or kelim, or vessels to watch, and we understand from that Pasuk, ma kelim shnayim, just like the kelim referred to as in plural, it's a minimum of two. Af kesef shnayim, so too when it says kesef, it's two. And ma kesef davar chashav, just like kesef is something that's an important thing. Af kol davar chashav, so too it has to be something that's important. The Achmona ki hu zeh, and the pasuk is saying ki hu zeh. Ki hu zeh is what we learn out, the idea of modem and mixas. And Rashi explains, the pasuk says ki yitein ish means tchilas nesina. What we're learning from this pasuk is that the original giving is beis kesef, meaning the case, the original claim is beis kesef, as Shmuel said, v'alo koi ki hu zeh. It's on that the words ki hu zeh are going on. Davar chashav, it has to be a davar chashav. V'shiaru chachamim shemoa kesef davar chashav, when the chachamim say that a moa of silver is considered to be something that is chashav, something that is significant. Ma kesef davar chashav, af kol davar chashav garsin, on the proper text should be just like kesef is a davar chashav, so too we're talking about something that is chashav. V'lo garsin and af kelim davar chashav, do not have the text that the kelim are a davar chashav. The ilu bekelim, because by kelim, amrin l'kaman, we say later on, the afilu bekfiras machtin chayiv, even if the person denies machtin, insignificant items like needles, the person is chayiv. V'hai af kol b'midi delav kli kamer. When it says over here af kol, that it has to be something important, we're talking about something that is not considered a kli, it's not considered a vessel. The kamer rachman, and the pasuk is saying ki hu zeh, again it says the phrase ki hu zeh, al zeh bo hashvua, on this a shvua, a person has to take a shvua, kishayomar ki hu zeh, when he says ki hu zeh, which is a way of saying kishamoda b'mixasa, when he's moda b'mixas, when he has a partial admission, alman, so again we see hoda mitoch tainas shtei kesefi, from the reading of the pasuk, the person is admitting from a claim of shtei kesef, and again that's what Shmuel had said. And so again, the point over here is that the pasuk says it has to be two, and it has to be davar chashav. A davar chashav is a ma kesef. That is two ma kesef. That's the initial claim, and that's why the psukim support Shmuel. And the Gemara continues and says, "V'Rav." Now, how does Rav respond to this? How does he understand the psukim? Hahumi boy lay. So that pasuk is really just needed lahodab and mixas hatayna for the concept of the fact that the person is admitting to just part of the claim. And Rashi explains, Hahu zeh, this word zeh in the pasuk, mi boile, what that's needed to teach us as follows. De'in shavua ela b'hodah b'mixas, just the fundamental halacha that the person only takes a shavua if there's a partial admission. Kilomar es zeh animod, it's as if to say, I'm admitting to this. V'lo la'gmuran da'tainas beis kesef koi, it's not to teach us that it's going on the claim of beis kesef. U'liolam hodah levan mikfir ashtei kesef kamer. Really, the pasuk means there needs to be an admission besides for the denial of shtei kesef. It's not that he's admitting from the claim of shtei kesef, it's that he's admitting to something, and there's a denial of shtei kesef. And the Gemara continues, Ushmuel. Now Shmuel responds to this, Ksiv hu uchsiv zeh. It actually says two words in the pasuk. It says the word hu, and it says the word zeh. It says ki hu zeh. And the idea is, di'i kafar b'miksas v'odi b'miksas chayiv. The idea is that if he denies part of it, and he admits to part of it chayiv, and again, the idea according to Shmuel is that the entire claim is shtei kesef, and if there's an admission of part of it and a denial of part of it, then the person is considered to be liable. V'Rav, now Rav will respond to that. What does he do with both words now, hu and zeh? One is for the idea of modim and mixas, as Rav just said. And the other one is to say that the admission has to be from the same type as the claim, as was mentioned in the Mishnah. And the Gemara continues, Ushmuel. Now Shmuel responds to that, even if we're going to say that one is for modim and mixas and one is for the idea of hodami min hataina, but lav memelo shamat mine, but don't we understand automatically from that, the chasro lataina, that some of the taina, some of the claim, is now missing, so to speak, meaning to say again, he's admitting to part of what was within the claim. Meaning to say, if the pasuk of ki huzeh, if that's telling you there's an idea of modim and mixas, and it's telling you mimin hataina, that admission is from the claim, so even that supports what Shmuel is saying, because the idea is that the total claim was, let's say, 2 kesef, and then mimin hataina from the claim, there is an admission, and so therefore, again, even according to that understanding, it's a support for Shmuel. And Rashi explains, V'lav memelo shamat mina. Don't we automatically understand the chasr lataina, that now there's something lacking in the claim, meaning l'rav parchina. This is really a question on Rav. Nehi nami de l'mixas hataina umimin hataina asu. Even if we grant what Rav is saying, that the pasuk means there's an idea of mixas hataina and it has to be mimin hataina, miu lav memelo shamat mina. But don't we then nevertheless automatically understand from that the chasr lataina rishona, that what's really happening is there's an original claim, and then the person is admitting to part of the claim, so that deducts, so to speak, from the original claim. V'enkan od kfira mishtei kesef. It's not saying that there's a denial beyond the shtei kesef that were mentioned. It's saying there's a denial within the shtei kesef that were mentioned, and so still the psukim seem to be like Shmuel. And so the Gemara continues with another explanation of the psukim on behalf of Rav. Elo amar lach Rav, rather Rav will say to you, Kesef kiyasa meikara lekfira hu da'asa. The fact that the word kesef is in the pasuk at all from the outset, that really must be referring to the denial. Diem kain, because if not, if we would say that kesef was just referring to the claim, so lichtov rachmana kiita nishal reo kalim lishmor, the pasuk could have just written kalim. It didn't even need to write kesef. Ve'ano amina, and I would have said as follows, ma kalim shnayim, just like kalim is in the plural, 2 of them, af kol shnayim, so to everything it has to be 2. And so kesef dechosav rachmana lamali, why does it even need to say the word kesef at all? Emeinu inyan lataina, so if it's not referring to the claim, teneyu inyan lekfira, so then we can apply it to the denial. The denial has to be at least 2 kesef. That's how Rav understands the pasuk. Ushmuel amar lach, and Shmuel will say to you, he'll respond, ikasav rachmana kalim v'lo kasav kesef. If the pasuk only wrote the word kalim and did not write the word kesef, hava amina, then I would have thought, my kalim shnayim af kol shnayim, I would have understood that just like kalim is 2, so to everything is 2. Avol davar chashav lo b'inan, but I would not say that a davar chashav is required. I wouldn't understand that idea, and kamash malon, and so that's why the pasuk has to teach us with the word kesef what it teaches us, that you need a davar chashav, and therefore you cannot learn like Rav to apply it to the denial. Rather, it is talking about the initial claim. And Rashi explains, Elo amar lach Rav, rather Rav will say to you, Kesef kiyasa meikara lekfirasa. Kesef from the very beginning is talking about the denial. V'lav l'tchilas taina is not referring to the beginning of the claim. V'ano amina af kol shnayim, because it could have just not said the word Kesef, and I would have known it always has to be 2. V'havale Kesef nami, b'hai klala, Kesef wouldn't be included, it has to be a minimum of 2. And Shmuel responds, no, if it didn't say Kesef, havel davar chashav lo b'in, and one would think that a davar chashav is not needed. V'hava amina ki heichi degabe kalim, and one would have thought, just like that by kalim afilu tanu beis machtin v'hodelo be'echad me'en chayiv, even if the claim is just 2 needles and he admits one of them is chayiv to take the oath, kidel kamon, as we'll say later on, kol midinami, by anything also, to toin leitrei, by any item where 2 is claimed, v'hodelo bechad, and he admits one of them, lachayiv, he should be chayiv, ve'afilu lekotaina kamaisa shtei kesef, even if the original claim is not 2 kesef, lahachi itzrich kesef, that's why kesef is needed, l'meilaf minei midi delav kalim b'ina davar chashav, to learn from that even something that is not kalim, it needs to be a davar chashav. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Shtei kesef yesh li biyadcha, the initial claim over here is 2 kesef, and the response is, Ein lach biyadi ala pruta, I only owe you 1 pruta. So pater, so it said in the Mishnah that the person is exempt, there is no Shevuos modim b'mixas. And so the Gemara initially thinks that this is a support for Rav, because the denial wasn't 2 kesef. My time, what's the reason? La mishuv de chasr latain, isn't because the claim is lacking with Tiyufta de Shmuel. This is a refutation of Shmuel. According to Shmuel, if the claim is 2 kesef and there's an admission of a pruta, there should be a Shevuos modim and mixas. The Gemara continues and answers for Shmuel. Amar lach Shmuel, Shmuel will say to you, Misavrit shavek katani, do you think that when the Mishnah talks about shtei kesef and pruta, it means a value of shtei kesef and a value of a pruta? If that were the case, that certainly would be modim and mixas. But no, davka katani, it's actually learned specifically shtei kesef, meaning the claim was specifically 2 silver, and the response was a pruta, which is copper, and the real reason is mashatanu lo hodelo, or mashahodelo lo tanu. Again, the admission has to be from the same type as the claim. Over here, what was claimed he's not admitting to, what he's admitting to was not claimed, and that's the real reason why it's not modim and mixas. The Gemara says, Yachi, if so, ema seifa, let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Shtei kesef upruta yesh li biyadcha. Let's say the case is the claim is 2 kesef and a pruta, and ein lach biyadi ala pruta, and then he says that I owe you a pruta, chayiv, he is going to be chayiv. And so the Gemara says, Yamrid b'shlam mashav, if you're going to say that we mean the value of 2 kesef and a pruta, misham hachi chayiv, then it would make sense to say chayiv, because again, then you have a situation where there's a denial of 2 kesef, and there's an admission of a pruta, and that would work out exactly according to Rav. Elo yamrid davka, but if you're going to say it's specifically 2 kesef and a pruta, so amai chayiv, why should he be chayiv? Mashatanu lo hodelo, mashahodelo lo tanu, what he's claiming he's not admitting to, and what he's admitting to he's not claiming. Right now the Gemara is assuming that if the claim was 2 separate items and you admit to one of the items, so that would not be considered to be modim and mixas, because that's not an admission from the claim. But the Gemara now says that's actually not true. Midihu taima el Shmuel. This entire explanation we're giving right now is in order to support Shmuel's understanding of the Mishnah. But ho'amar Rav Nachman amar Shmuel. But Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, To'anu chitin u'so'or, and if a person claims wheat and barley, v'hodelo be'echad mehen, and then he admits to one of them, chayiv. So then he's chayiv. He is obligated to take a Shavuot. That's considered to be admitting from the claim. And so therefore, again, according to Shmuel, we can understand that the Mishnah really means davka katani. We're talking davka. And again, in that first case, the person is not admitting from the claim. In the second case, where 2 things are being claimed, and he's admitting one of them, so then he is considered to be admitting from the claim. And the Gemara continues, Hachanam mistaber. It actually makes sense to say, to understand that we're talking davka in the Mishnah. Mina katani seifa, because look at the end of the Mishnah where it says, litra zahav yesh li biyadcha. Let's say the person claims a litra, that is talking about a weight, a certain weight of gold that you have of mine. Ein lach biyadi al litra kesef, and then he responds, I have a litra of kesef, but not a litra of zav. So then pater, so then in that case he's exempt, and it would seem to be the reason why he's exempt is because davka, because he's not really responding to the claim. Iyamrid b'shlama davka katani. Now, if you say that the Mishnah is davka, that we're talking about the specific items, it's not the value, mishum hachi pater, so then it makes sense to say pater, because he's not admitting to what the claim is. But if you're going to say like Rav, that we're talking about just what it's worth, we're talking about the value of a litra zav, or the value of a litra kesef, so am I potter. So why be exempt in that case? Litra tuva have, litra is worth plenty, it's certainly worth enough to be considered the minimum amount of denial and the minimum amount of admission, and so therefore really the end of the Mishnah only makes sense according to Shmuel if you're saying davka. And elami the seifa davka, now if you're going to say the end of the Mishnah is davka, reishanami davka, shouldn't we interpret the whole Mishnah that way? The beginning of the Mishnah also is dafka, and that supports what we're saying in regards to Shmuel. It would actually be possibly a refutation on Rav, and that's what the Gemara says. Leima te'avet tiyufta de Rav. Well, maybe we should say that this should actually be a refutation of Rav if we're going to understand the Mishnah in this fashion. And Rashi explains, Elami the Seifa Dafka, again, if you're learning the end of the Mishnah Dafka, Lashon Kushyu, this is all part of a question. Neima Te'avi Tiyufta de Rav Meireshin, now we can have a refutation of Rav from the beginning of the Mishnah. Tekatani Shtei Kesef Yeshli Biyod Chayin L'cha Biyadi Ala Pruta Potter, again, it says that if a person makes a claim of 2 Kesef and he responds by admitting to a Pruta, so he's exempt, and apparently V'taima Mishum Dafka Tanan, apparently the whole Mishnah is Dafka, and the reason why he's exempt is because of the fact that it's Dafka, because he's not admitting to the item that was being claimed. Umashatanu lo hodelo. What was claimed from him he's not admitting to, and therefore we could infer hatanu shave v'hodelo would be the exact same case, but it would just be the value of 2 kesef is being claimed, and then he's admitting to the value of a pruta. So then v'hodelo shave chayiv. So then apparently the person would be chayiv to take a shvua. V'afagav detaina kamaisa lo have elishtei kesef, even though the initial claim was only 2 kesef, which would really not be enough according to Rav, because you need to have a denial of at least 2 kesef, and so therefore again it would seem like the fact that the end of the Mishnah is dafka should mean that the beginning of the Mishnah is dafka, which would be a question on Rav. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar lach Rav, Rav will say to you, Kula masnis and shava, really the entire Mishnah is not dafka, it's talking about shava, it's talking about the value of these items. However, velitra zav shani, but that end of the Mishnah line, you can't really compare it to the beginning of the Mishnah. Litra zav is different, and Rashi explains, litra shani, by litra it's different, dekevan shatanu mishkol, because when you're claiming from the person a weight, vadai dafka katani, there you actually certainly mean dafka, you mean specifically what's being claimed. Avokol matbeos demasnisim, but when we're talking about coins in the Mishnah, so shavakamar, by coins it always just means value. Shederach matbea laso, so damim l'chol devarim, because that's what we do by coins, we make them, we render them a value for all things, that's what we use coins for, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Amud Aleph.